And welcome, folks, to the talk show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David. And, folks, we got a great show today. I have an excellent guest, a friend of mine who are going to be my guest on the show. And his name is BERGQUAM of Real America Voices. And I got a great panel, and we're going to talk about immigrations. We're going to talk about his undercover work that he did when he posed to be a migrant. So if you ain't got nothing to do, call your friends and let them know you're listening to Let the Truth Be Told Radio. I'm your host, Pastor David. Y'all come on in. Welcome to the show, Let the Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Pastor David, and thank you. Folks, we got an excellent show today. I had an old friend of mine who is taking a little time out, and I asked him if he would come on our show and grace us and talk a little bit more about immigrations. BERGQUAM, who is a correspondent, international correspondent, that works with Real America Voices, Steve Bannon, War Room, Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk shows. He's the undercover reporter that has been spilling a lot of news about what's actually going on at the border. So he's going to be our guest today, and he should be in shortly. But I want to get my guest in. But first and foremost, let me give all praises to God and my Lord and Savior, Yeshua of Nazareth, who makes it possible for me to be here. All you listening who woke us up this morning, we should be thankful and grateful. And let me get my guest in here. Hey, Doc, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You know, it's we got a great guest coming in today, and he's going to shed a lot of light on immigrations and what he saw as an undercover agent. He went undercover as a migrant.
Wow.
And so, you know, he paid the money and he took the trek. I mean, all the stuff he's seen, we got some footage we'll play about that. But I know you wanted to get started early on a couple of topics. Let our listeners know what's on your mind today.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about this Target boycott that's going on. It's being led by Pastor Jamal Bryant here in Georgia. And, you know, in his opinion, they've made headway. The stock has gone down from $138 to about $93. They've lost $12 billion in revenue. They really, you know, from their vantage point, they're like, we're sticking it to them. You know, they are going to capitulate and do what they want us to do. You know, they are still heavily behind DEI. They're also very heavily behind the LGBTQ plus community. That Target, you know, basically they put that out of the stores because there were other patrons that said, we don't want this in the stores. We definitely don't want it in the children's section. So there were a lot of things happening on with Target, but it just really floored me. I was like, wow, you're fighting for something that does not benefit you. I mean, DI does not benefit Black people. We've covered this on the show, you know, more than once, but I just found it interesting that this is the hill that they want to, you know, climb on and die on, you know, and then saying, okay, we only have a select few people that are going to deal with Target, you know, if you're not a part of this panel and group. And I'm like, okay, I respect what you're doing. I don't really shop at Target
Me
personally.
neither.
You know, it's one of those things. Maybe if I'm out of town and I really need something and I can't find it anywhere else, I'll go to Target. But I find I have better options out there. So, you know, so, but that's just how I shop. No, you know, no dig on Target. But like I said, I find it fascinating. You know, Target's been put under a lot of abuse. You know, they survived a lot of I won't call them raids, but there were times when, you know, their stores got, you know, trashed during some of the riots that happened. And some of them decided to rebuild in those communities, some of them didn't, and they left. And with them, they took jobs away from those areas. So, like I said, I find it, that's just one of the stories I came across, and I was like, I gotta share it with you guys because it's happening, it's out there.
I want to say this about the Jamal Bryant leading a bunch of parishioners and other people with the false narrative of DEI, because, as you know, DEI does not benefit Black people. But the people that it does benefit is the carpetbag preachers like Jamal Bryant and Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, you would think that they're promoting the homosexual lifestyle. They're pushing the LGBT group. And so they're acting like they speak for all Black Americans, and they do not.
No.
The black community is not as welcoming for the LGBT stuff to be pushed in our faces in such a the way that it is. And so we're saying, you know, hey, Al Sharpton don't count. Okay, he's past his time. The only thing that's going to happen is he's a hustler and a race baiter, just like Jamal Bryant. Sharpton is passing the mantle over to him to say, hey, you know what? We can attack these issues. We can make money, because at the end of the day, Sharpton and Bryant will go back in. They'll give them money to call off the boycott, and it'll be business as usual. So this is a form of extortion that Jamal Bryant is using with Al Sharpton to get money out of a company that clearly the stockholders don't want the DEI, nor do they want the LGBT stuff in the store the way they stuck it in there. So this is just a way for Jamal Bryant and Al Sharpton to extort money, because they have a name, to extort money from the companies that supposedly are a violation of DEI when DEI is totally illegal.
Right. Like, and, you know, Tabitha Brown, you know, she actually has some of her products in Target. And I know that she initially, you know, people were saying, hey, we got to boycott Target. And she was like, you know, when you do that, you actually hurt Black businesses that are in the store. And what I do applaud from her is she's like, you know what, just buy it from me directly. So she's doing a lot of her work, just direct sales, right? I think you can also get her items off of Amazon, but she's definitely, you know, being a very, I would say, flexible entrepreneur. You know, if you can't buy it there, you can buy it from me, or you can buy it in another venue. Because, you know, the day of the big box stores, they're kind of going the way of the dinosaur, just like malls. You know, people shop more online than they do in person. You know, part of it I like, part of it I don't like. But like the big box stores trying to take over, I'm telling you, it's going the way of extinction, you know.
The big box. Dre, what's up, Dre?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Oh man, how you doing, my brother?
Doing well.
Well, you know what, guys, we got our approval, so we about to launch the channel and everything, man. I thank you guys for getting involved, and we making this happen, man. The people are gonna love it. You know, BERGQUAM, he'll be with us shortly. He's getting things together there. But we was talking about how Al Sharpton them. See, these old guys continue to race baiting. They do not address any issues. You would think at the way that the migrants came, you would think Al Sharpton would have came against the migrants and came against the government for adding problems to the Black community that we have already had. Why would you add more? But he's been totally silenced. You know, what's your thoughts on that, Dre?
Well, it's more of the same, because Hakeem Jeffries came out the other day and said that they need to show the voters that they're serious about securing the border. and that the administration and Democrats were slow to react to the surge that happened at the border. So that didn't answer the question that the other Democrat had. That her question was, what is the plan for Democrats to deal with the distrust from voters about you guys being able to protect the border? So that was the non-verbatim question, and he explained that by saying what they should do without giving any details. So it's more of the same. They don't want to get into details, and they have no plan.
No,
right.
No.
And it's totally rhetoric that they put out there, and they keep poisoning, especially Black people. They're using Black people to put money in their pockets. They get Black people all emotional, and when we start doing like Reverend Al Sharpton, the good old days, and all that kind of stuff, man, those days are gone by.
Yeah.
And under their supposed watch, they've created no economic development in the Black community.
Yeah.
They haven't stood up for Black people's civil rights. They have done nothing but sit back and be nothing but pawns for the Democratic Party. They're little watchdogs. And then when something happened, here come Al, here come Jamal Bryant. Yeah. What's the brother Crump? He can't even speak. You need to take some speaking classes before you Crump being Crump before he start talking, but it's the same old rhetoric, and there's never no progress for the Black community under their type of leadership. And that's why God done brought us to the forefront. He's tired of watching them. You need young blood like us now who gonna say, you know what? Let's get rid of all that. Let's look at what we have right now, and let's bring solutions to the problems that we have today, man.
Yeah, I think it's really sad how the Democrats, they don't get it. I mean, we've got Democrats right now flying down to El Salvador, trying to get someone out of prison so here's the thing. Even if they got him out, they still have to send him back and put him in prison because he's been sentenced in his own country and in ours. I don't understand. I mean, literally, we have Democrats flying down there. I pulled up two of them. Let's see. Robert Garcia, who's a Democrat representative of Florida, and Maxwell Frost from Florida. And I'm just like, what are y'all doing? I mean, there was a time when there were certain things you did in politics. It was political suicide, right? It was like, you're never going to recover from this. But now the stunts, and in my opinion, this is a stunt. This is to get their name out there and get people talking about them, because as long as people are talking about them, good or bad, they think it's going to bode well for them. But, I've got news for you. People have woken up, and they are tired of our own government supporting illegal activity blatantly. Like, this is blatant. There's no blurred lines. You are supporting a criminal, and that's
well, I just got a quick text from Ben, and I want us to start playing a little bit footage on Ben. Folks, Ben BERGQUAM is a journalist who is part of Real America Voices, the network that a lot of Black folks don't know about. But it is going across the country. Ben and I have been friends. We were introduced together a few years ago by Terry Newsom. And, we're both on the front. All of us are on the front line. But Ben has done a lot of work. I'm going to play a clip that he did some work here in Chicago. Check it out.
Down here, under the overpass, American citizens sleeping in tents. They make them live in these tents while they're putting illegals up in high-rise hotel buildings. This is how they want you to live, America. This is what the Democrats think of you. This is World Economic Forum's "You will own nothing and be happy." This is the Great Reset. It's all connected to that. Illegal immigration, it's all connected. The abandonment of the American people, the abandonment of the rule of law, the abandonment of God, family, country. This is how they want you to live. We just came a couple blocks from keeping the illegals up on high-rise buildings and giving them 3 meals a day, and you guys are stuck out here.
Yeah, I mean, it don't make no sense. I mean, we really need the help. It's cold out here, and we can't even get on our own city buses. Feel like immigrants in our own city, basically.
Do you feel like you've been abandoned by Mayor Johnson and the Democrats?
Totally.
Wow.
It's to the point that it's like, man, do I really want to leave Chicago to try to find something that, better conditions to help me get a job or something, anything,
Well, God bless you, man.
Man, I appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir.
And I hope this reaches the right person. Trump 2024, all the way.
Guys, now we was together that same day. We took them. We was at the place where they was bringing illegals in, and they was bringing them in buses. I mean, and they would have had warming centers. I was there that day. They went further on, but we was together earlier. But they was bringing them in buses. They had warming center for them, and that was just a few blocks away from where they was treating the illegals like kings and queens. That we saw Chicagoans, veterans sleeping under the tent. See how they live in, man, compared to how they did illegals, man. And that's the reason why we need to get rid of the leadership in here, Dre. It has to go. We can't continue like this. But BERGQUAM started bringing this message forward. He was the one, Steve Bannon and all the other shows, they start presenting this type of stuff because, regular media, you never saw that in regular media. You didn't see that at ABC and all those other places. No, not like how they did it and broke it down. Not like how we're doing it and breaking it down. Your thoughts on that, Dre? And I got another clip we're going to put together that we can take a look at before he gets here.
Yeah, and we see the gentleman out there, and one of the first things that he's
saying. Hang on, there he is. Let me get Ben in here right quick. There he is. Hey, my brother, how you doing?
I am doing great.
Out in the field, working.
Hello. Yeah.
Hey, Ben.
Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I miss you, man. I was just telling these guys, you've been in Chicago, you've been all over the world. You've done a lot of great things for this country, and you're a true patriot, my brother. And I want to tell you how much, it's an honor to have you on the show with my team, Doc Shack and Andre Barnes.
No,
Ben,
great to be with you.
What's going on out there in the country today? Talk a little bit about what's happening with the illegals, because I know you and Tom have been together. You guys have been doing the ICE race. Talk a little bit about that and how you can see the changes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's night and day from Biden to Trump. Biden let in, just as a conservative estimate, 15 million illegals. And every single one of those you're paying for, I'm paying for, every single American citizen's paying for. They said they couldn't stop it. They said that this was, they were doing everything they could. What they did was actually entice them. They invited them. They had Secretary Mayorkas go around the world, create this whole controlled flow effort with the United Nations, and basically made it easier for illegals to come into our country. And as you saw in that last clip you just played, while American citizens, many of them veterans, many hardest hit, the Black communities across America, get nothing. They get abandoned, and you had illegals just being shipped in from every corner of the world. Since President Trump has taken office, first off, that invitation has stopped. The border is secure. I was just down on the border and in a spot in Sunland Park, New Mexico, where I was there, where there were 5,000 people coming across per day just in that section. Now it's virtually stopped. I mean, there's still a few here and there. The cartel's still doing their operations. They're still pushing drugs through. They're just using a lot more of the tunnels and driving them across the ports of entry. But as far as illegal traffic across our borders, it's gone down 99%. The biggest problem we have now are the 15 million plus illegals that we have in our country that are still victimizing Americans, that are still taking American citizen resources, and the administration doing their best to deport them. Again, riding our next episode of Law and Border, which will actually air this Saturday on Real America's Voice, is that it's actually the 3 ICE operations we did in Chicago, in New York, and in Baltimore. And the biggest problems they have right now are the judges and the cities, these sanctuary center cities like Chicago and like the state of Illinois, that are blocking them from being able to do their jobs. So, that's really the biggest problem. We've got to have prosecutions. We've got to have these politicians out of office. We've got to have prosecutions against the ones that are aiding and abetting foreign enemies that President Trump has declared foreign enemies. And so that's where we're at right now. But it's night and day compared to what it was just a few months ago.
You guys got any questions? Ben, go ahead, Doc.
I actually do. I was listening to Alex Jones the other day, and they were talking. I forget the gentleman that they had on, but he was talking about the children that have been trafficked and how they actually bring them across with documents, and then they'll take them back across the border, and then bring them back in the U.S., and they're just lost in the system. And he's, he said there may be hundreds of thousands of them missing, but they kind of know where they are. And what I mean by that is they've turned them over to certain people. Have you seen the drop in children go down across, with the crossings? I know the cartel is still doing what they're doing, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down, but I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Well, and just to clarify that, the cartel controls it all south of the border and actually north of the border in Canada. The cartels, you think of the Mexican cartels as in Mexico, they actually are global enterprises. So they actually work in Canada. They work all over the world. They work in Europe. The Sinaloa cartel is in multiple countries around the world. They control all of that. And what I call it, what Border Patrol calls it, is recycling of the children. So they'll use a child that's owned by the cartel, whether that child was stolen, kidnapped from a foreign country or from Mexico, or they were given over to the cartel in exchange for money or something from the families. That happens often, sadly, as well. Then those children are used. They're given to men who come across the border. It's easier for a single adult male if they bring a child to be able to be let into the country than if they come across on their own. And so that during Biden, yes, that was happening to the extent that is really unfathomable to most people. Hundreds of thousands of children that happened to. We know of 80,000+ that are missing under Joe Biden, but it's probably, in the neighborhood of a million. I mean, if you actually took the unknowns. So children are still being exploited. Children are still being trafficked. Mostly now, though, it's being done in the areas outside of ports of entry, outside of Border Patrol control. Although the border is secure, there are still areas out in the deserts of Arizona and Texas where you can still get across and outrun the Border Patrol sometimes. And so that's still happening. They're still trafficking children across. But the recycling of children, where they're brought across with one man, they're sent back, and then it's done again. Just to give you an example, I was in Yuma, Arizona, and I was talking to Border Patrol there. This was during President Trump's first term and after Obama had left. And they said they had found a child that was recycled 13 times. So that child had come into their custody 13 times. This was at the facility, the Clint Border Patrol facility, where AOC went with their white pantsuit and was crying on the fence, talking about how the children were being kept in cages by President Trump. These children were actually finally being protected by President Trump. He was taking them out of cartel-controlled hands, out of these monsters, these molesters' hands that were using them. And when they use them to come across the border, they do whatever they want to them. So these children are being raped, they're being sodomized, they're being molested by these men because the men don't care, and the cartel sure as hell don't care. And then the kids were being sent back. And so what President Trump did by separating these kids, putting them in detention centers and actually holding them, trying to find houses for them through HHS, that was the most compassionate thing compared to what Joe Biden did. Now, what President Trump also did was he enacted biometric testing to test the men that were coming across with the children to find out if those children actually belonged to them. As soon as Joe Biden came into office, one of the first things they did was to end that biometric testing. And so President Trump, when he did it, he was attacked by the ACLU, said this was unfair, that this is an invasion of privacy. President Trump won that battle, and they were able to do the biometric testing. Joe Biden ended that. He stopped doing it to allow more children to be trafficked. President Trump has reenacted that, and so this is basically, we're seeing, that's the difference between the two. You had the most child trafficking in human history under Joe Biden and the least child trafficking under President Trump, both in his first term, and I believe we'll see that again now. So all of the trafficking in the areas where it used to be where they would go and present themselves, turn themselves in, and say we're here for asylum or whatever bogus claim they were coming up with. They've been coached by the NGOs, Catholic Charities, and all these Al Otro Lado. One of the worst churches is actually there in Chicago, Lincoln United Methodist Church. All of these organizations that aid and abet cartels and illegals coming across the border, that those operations have stopped. Now they're still getting funds. A lot of these organizations still have funds from the previous administration, and so they're still trafficking people. They're still trafficking children around our country. And so until we actually see prosecutions in the United States of these individuals and organizations, I'm not going to feel comfortable about it. But I know they are, Tom Homan and ICE, they are going after these children, trying to track down their last known address. But to your point, that what was happening under Joe Biden was a child would come across either in an adult's custody or not. Sometimes they would come across and say, this is my uncle, but I'm going to see my family. And they would have a piece of paper with an address on it. It used to be where they would have to go. I actually spoke to Carlos, one of these, the guys that was actually working for one of the NGOs that was taking the children and then transporting them to each location. They used to have to go and actually verify that this is the actual person. They would do background checks. Again, under President Trump's first term, they would do background checks on not just the person that they're going to, but everybody that was residing in that household. Joe Biden ended that. And so they would just send them to anywhere and then let them go. And many of those children went to one location and then were trafficked to another location. And that's how that's how it came to be. We got that number 80,000 where they're missing. We don't know. So what they're doing now is trying to backtrack and find out, okay, what was the last known address? Who was the person they were given to? But it's a massive, massive undertaking. And, to me, it's the most evil part of what was happening under Biden, that you would exploit children like that under the guise of compassion. You would have these organizations that were pretending to do good, but in reality, they were trafficking children to be sexually assaulted. That's what was happening. And that's what's still happening today by many of these organizations in the United States.
Ben, we here in Chicago, I was in a energy program, and we stumbled upon NGOs that was giving still dollars right to this day until they closed it off, shut it off. I was able to get in touch with Tom, them, and when the president froze the funding, they were getting millions of dollars saying they was helping the Black community, but the money was going to illegals and diverted to other entities, man. So we're starting to uncover these things, and that's why I say it's important that I can get with you and we can talk about this, because the world needs to know exactly how the NGOs are operating in the Black community. And I think the media is not, talking about it, but we're gonna talk about that. And also, I want to get with you. There's an event coming up in May. Maybe I want you to be a keynote speaker at. It's going to be a organization, all the organizations, street organizations getting together, trying to figure out ways how they can get the Black community and the Black family back on track. We did it in 2022. We made a lot of waves. We stopped a lot of crimes. This is something that Chicago, these are grassroots people. So we'll talk about that. And, some other things like the Black political prisoners and so forth. Yeah. Dre, you got a question?
Yes. So, Ben, I was wondering, what do you guys actually need out there now? The Border Patrol, because recently Speaker Jeffries came out and he said that their biggest thing that they're going to focus on is convincing the voters that they care about securing the border. So what kind of things do you guys actually need from them? Because we know how policies matter and can make the Border Patrol's job a lot easier. What would you like to see as far as enforcement?
The biggest thing is public support. And I think you're speaking of Speaker Johnson, not Jeffries. Thank God it's not Jeffries. But yeah, the biggest thing is public support. And that's partly why you see Jeffries and all these Democrats going out and getting all of this anti-Elon Musk, anti-President Trump, anti-ICE, all of these protests going supporting Hamas and all of these foreign terrorist organizations across America. That's why you see the Democrats and the mainstream media out there in all these major cities across America chanting and screaming and acting like the American people don't support what President Trump is doing and what the administration is doing. We need outspoken, in particular, inner city people coming out saying, no, we support President Trump. We support the administration. We support getting rid of illegals. By the way, this is what's happening in our community. We've been abandoned. This is what they've done to us. This is what our community needs. So that to me is the most important. Sharing the truth, you know, our work versus the mainstream media. Anybody in your local community saying this is the reality of it, please share all of our episodes of Law and Border. And then anything out there that's showing the truth, the reality of what's going on, because this is what they did under President Trump's first term. They took the mainstream media, and thank God now we have social media that's actually on our side.
Yes,
Who would have
exactly.
thought that Twitter, now X, would be on our side, that Mark Zuckerberg would actually slow down on the censorship? A lot of this, there's a lot of movement, and now we have all these outside media outlets. You know, Real America's Voice in President Trump's first term was a fledgling agency, a fledgling company.
Yes.
Now we're fairly massive. I mean, we're filling the void of the mainstream media. Obviously, you know, podcasts and work like you guys are doing is incredible. So the more that this gets out there, but also in the streets, you know, we've got to be able to go out there and counteract. That doesn't mean go out and be violent like the left is, but go out there and counteract and say, this is the truth. You guys, either you're being lied to or you're lying to people. This is what's really happening here. We support ICE. If you had that happen, if you had an uprising across America, in particular in the inner cities, saying we support President Trump, we support what they're doing, we support the deportation of every illegal from our community, that would shift the entire game. And so that would be my request to you guys. Anybody who can do that, let ICE know that you support them. If you know somebody is being harbored, if you know there's crimes taking place, you let ICE know. I mean, if you know there's illegals in your neighborhood, you can contact ICE and you can tell them this is what's happening in my neighborhood, because the city's not able to do it, or the city's choosing not to do it. The police aren't able to do it. In fact, it's a crime. Now even you can't even stop for you as a landowner or a landlord. You have to rent to an illegal. You can't even ask if they're an illegal. So everything that you can do as a citizen to be able to stand up and have a voice and say, this is what I believe and this is what needs to happen, that is extremely powerful. In particular, my motto has always been stand even if you stand alone. So if you're out there watching this or listening to this and you feel like we feel and you want to have a voice, and you know, a lot of people always ask me, well, where do I start? You start where you are and you take that